What is up, everybody? This is the voice of college football, Missouri Tigers Live. Oh my goodness. Ollie, he doesn't want me to do the show. Poor Ollie, he don't want me to do the show. Send in this. Ollie, please. Alrighty. My name is Zach Ramirez. I'm here like I am every week. I've calmed down a little bit since Saturday. After the Blues game on. After Mizzou loses to Alabama 27-24. So tonight we're going to break down Auburn as we head into that game and a huge game for the Missouri Tigers. We'll talk a little bit more about Alabama. We're going to do some notes from national. There's some stuff nationally we need to talk about. And there's some stuff we'll talk about within the SEC and, kind of where Eli Drinkwitz fits into all of this. I don't plan on being here that long. My nose, my face, I have a sinus infection, so it feels like my face is going to come out. The inside muscles of my face are coming out. So, but there is a lot to talk about. So as long as I'm here and if the conversation's good, then we'll talk about it. I'm not going to bring up recruiting. Mizzou's on a bit of a heater. They did pick up Johnny Jones, a decommit from UCLA. They picked up a few other guys through recruiting, but look, guys, I have 9 months to talk about recruiting. So we'll talk about recruiting at that point. Ollie, please, buddy. With his meow, I don't know if it's like a positive, like if he's happy or if he's sad. I just don't know. So, and my other cat's there. So, anyway, getting back into it, kind of wrapping up Alabama talk here at the Voice of College Football. Look, it's not a game I think you can be mad at that you lost. All right, you played. I was frustrated after the game because there were so many opportunities for Mizzou to pick up a win that, let's be frank, has avoided this football program for years. You have a national title contender. I firmly do believe Alabama is a national title contender. I believe after Saturday's games, I do think Ohio State is the best team in the country and the clear favorite heading into the back half of the season. But that doesn't mean that Alabama can't win it. I think Ty Simpson is the best quarterback in the country. We'll see whatever's going on with Ryan Williams. I'm sure DeBoer will get figured out. I don't know if he's hurt. I don't know what's going on there. But Jeremy Bernard's excellent. Some other guys emerged last week. They had some guys make some plays, and defensively, I thought they did a nice job. They sold out to stop the run. And how many quarterback teams are they going to play where they don't have the better quarterback with Ty Simpson? I mean, maybe Indiana, Mendoza, maybe Oregon, Tabor. Certainly nobody left on their schedule in the SEC. So, now that I've calmed down, and look, I think Corey Batoon had a pretty good game. I kind of went off on Batoon and I went off on Kirby Moore. We'll talk more about Kirby Moore in a second. I thought Batoon had a fine game. When you look at the stats, Ty Simpson, 31 throws, 200 yards. Jeremy Bernard didn't really make a huge impact on the game. Ryan Williams didn't have any impact at all. He was just doing cardio. Now, is that because he was hurt or was Pride Norwood doing just an excellent job? I don't know. I don't have the All-22, unfortunately. But I do think Norwood and Pride had something to do with it. And Hall, to be fair there. I know Pride got cooked on the 4th and 8 conversion that kind of iced it for Alabama. Look, there's 5 quarterbacks in the country that can make that throw. That's not on Corey Batoon. That's not on Pride. That's just an NFL quarterback, a first or second round pick quarterback making a damn throw. And sometimes that happens and you kind of have to eat it. And when it happens, you go, okay, cool, man. Bo Pribula can't make that throw. Like the last Mizzou quarterback that could potentially make that throw was Drew Lock. That's just a first-round NFL talent making a first-round NFL talent throw. So, again, my frustrations with the 3rd and 24 play call drive me nuts. But I don't ultimately I think Corey Batoon had a fine day. Like they didn't cook you. And it wasn't a loss where like last year against Texas A&M, when they lost that game, it was like, oh, okay, so we're done here. Like this team's not going to be making the playoff or anything like that. They got beat so badly against Texas A&M team that ended up not being that good. They were pretty good, but they didn't do anything crazy throughout the year. They ended up losing 4 games. Of course, they lost the big game to Texas. They lost to Auburn. It was just like, okay, so with that loss, like the season's not over. It's over if you lose this week, because I don't think you're going to finish out the season, without winning out. You have to go 10-2. And you got a big one. You're going to have an angry Auburn team at home under the lights at Jordan-Hare. And this is a game that Mizzou can win, obviously. It's a game that separates you. Like Auburn, I think will go through the year and they'll beat at home, especially. They'll beat the decent teams. And if you're an elite team at Texas A&M, I still think Oklahoma's pretty elite. When Mateer's healthy and playing, I think he had a bad day Saturday. We'll get more into it. And they lost to Georgia. Now, they should not have lost to Georgia. Okay. Score's 20-10. They did give up 20 unanswered. Yes, that was not a touchdown. Or that was a touchdown. That was not a fumble. But that doesn't mean they had to stop playing and give up 20 straight points. I know the refs were awful, and Hugh Freeze has every right to be mad about the refs. But I don't think that proclivity means you know what I'm saying. Outgained Alabama. Stats of War. I said Saturday. Stats of War is going to put out their how badly did we get beat graphic, and Mizzou from a net success rate standpoint outplayed Alabama. Now net success rate, it takes away explosives. It takes away turnovers. And Mizzou just too many turnovers, didn't force turnovers, and gave up some explosives that you can't do if you want to beat a team like Alabama. So you have to give full credit to the Crimson Tide for winning that football game on the road in a place that, look, man, Mizzou's going to become a tougher place to play as we head down the line. Like that, them enclosing the stadium is going to do a lot of great things. I've heard a lot of things from fans, like the stadium's louder than it used to be. There's more energy. There's more pep. Like they've kind of figured out how to make that atmosphere. It's never going to be. Let's see what we got here. Ambulance. It's never going to be LSU. It's never going to be in the SEC. It's never going to be crazy Jordan-Hare or Sanford. But there's room in there to be closer to the top half of the atmosphere. It can be better in Arkansas and Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Kentucky and Vanderbilt. And there's some programs that I just don't think have good atmospheres, despite their stadium. I've never watched a game at Texas and been like, ooh, that's scary. How do you win in that place? Same thing really for OU for a lot of games. Now OU's a little different. I've seen OU get crazy. But going back, I was talking about the stadium, the atmosphere was great, and the fans did a great job. Mizzou's only got 2 more home games this year, and one of them's going to be huge. So, and Mississippi State game might be pretty big as well. It's just a case of this program, man. For so long, and so many years, we've seen Mizzou be good. I've talked about it a lot. 2007, they were outstanding. They kicked the crap out of everybody except one team, and that was the Oklahoma Sooners, who the next year played for a national title. Oklahoma lost a couple goofy games that year, but they were still really good. They had Sam Bradford. You played them twice. You got beat twice. Kansas, you were kicking the crap out of, and then they came back. And look, you give Mangino, Reesing, and them credit as little as I want to. They did like have the ball with a chance, which is what Mizzou had. So 2008, just kind of, they lost again to Oklahoma. They got killed they lost to Oklahoma State in a look-ahead spot. They went to Texas and got killed. Again, three teams that were in the top 10 at one point. Bijan, what a run. 2010, they have this great win over Oklahoma. They actually did win one of these games against a premier team. And then the next week they go to Nebraska and just get smoked. They can't stop Roy Hilden Jr. 2013, backup quarterback against South Carolina. If Franklin plays that game, do they win? Probably. And it ended up not mattering. Like, you were a quarter away against Auburn from playing for a natty. And you play Auburn, you can't stop the run. Inexplicably, you switch to a 3-3-5. I don't know what kind of was happening there. And you lose. You get killed in the fourth quarter, and you lose by 17. 2014, you have another pretty good team. You get crushed by Georgia, crushed by Bama. You lose a weird one to Indiana. Don't know how that happened. I was at that game. I still don't know how that happened. And then you're lost in the wilderness, and you go to 2023, and you have a chance. You have a home game against LSU. You lose. You go to Georgia. Everything's on the table. You win this game, you're going to the SEC championship game. You put up a good fight, but you lose. Like, how long can Mizzou, and this isn't an Eli thing. I know, like, Penn State, we'll talk about Penn State here in just a minute. This isn't like, Eli's not good because you couldn't win these games. Like, Gary couldn't win them either. It's just a Mizzou thing. Like, how long are we going to have to go for Mizzou as a program wins one of these games? You lose to Georgia. Like, and look, you got a lot of claps on the back Saturday last year. You lost two. You didn't even compete against Bama in the second half, how much more do we have to hear? Like, oh, you're a good job on playing really hard against Alabama. Like, look, you can't be like too mad that you lost that game. You lost by 3 to a national title contender, a top 5 team that had a bad day in Tallahassee. Fine. But if Mizzou's ever going to take that step as a program, you have to win one of these games. Because until you do, your record, and people will be right, your good records, and if you look at the last couple of years, they've had awesome records, but every time it's going to happen, people are just going to say the schedule. And you can't really say they're wrong. Like, I don't think the 2023 team was only good because the schedule wasn't amazing. Like, Tennessee was a top 15, 20 team, and they weren't great. You lost to LSU. You lost to Georgia. Florida stunk. Arkansas stunk. Kentucky was a 500 team. Vanderbilt stunk. Kansas State was pretty good that year, but you just – until you win one of these, people are going to say – and they have the right, and you're not completely wrong to say, like, look, you're winning these games, great, but your record is inflated by your schedule. So you're going to have another couple opportunities this year, man. Like, you go to Oklahoma, I think they're pretty good despite what happened Saturday. You're going to go to Texas A&M. I think you're going to play Texas A&M. They're obviously, after what they did to you last year, I think they're pretty good. Vandy's pretty good, but that's not like in a talent level thing. I don't think Vandy's like more talented than you are. I think they have a better quarterback and a better weapon. Like, Eli Stowers is the best tight end in the country. So we'll see. We'll have to see, man. Like, we're just going to have to see. But that's my main, takeaway is, like, it's one thing or it's another. You're just out talented. I just think the coaches let him down on Saturday. Obviously, Bo did not have a good game. There's no arguing against that, really. Like, he just didn't play well. He kind of was the quarterback a lot of people were worried he would be when we came into the season. But it is what it is. Now you have one more mulligan if you want to make the playoff. One more mulligan. All righty. So let's go ahead and move on to next week, and let's talk about Auburn. It's a late kick down on the plains. We will be here live, of course, after the game here at the Voice of College Football, Missouri Tigers. How does Mizzou respond? How do they respond to this? Last year, after getting their butts kicked by Texas A&M, they played Auburn close. We'll talk about the game last year. It's really not fair to talk about that game last year. So much has changed. But and they respond, and they got a win despite Brady Cook missing half the game in the hospital. They responded to the Bama loss by winning. They responded to the South Carolina loss, which ended their season, by winning. In 2023, they responded to the LSU loss by going to Kentucky, falling behind, and then going and winning. They responded to the Georgia loss by kicking the absolute dog crap out of Tennessee in a fun game. So Eli, the last couple of years, has responded well to losses, but this one's a little different. I think you're playing a little bit better of a football team, and you're playing an angry football team. Auburn got absolutely hosed last week in a lot of instances. So we're going to see how they play out this year. Last year's game against Auburn, it was a 23-19 game, or 21-17 game. Where did I get 23-19 from? You fell down 17-6. Mookie Cooper has a huge play right before the start of the fourth quarter. You run in 2 touchdowns and you win the game. Auburn had Peyton Thorne at quarterback. So who cares? Brady Cook played. Drew Pine played. Brady Cook and Drew Pine both played kind of mid. Brady Cook has an excuse, though. Cam Coleman had one big catch. You're going to have to watch out for him this week. And nobody that Mizzou had, like Brett Norfleet, for 3 for 31. Josh Manning had a catch for 15 yards. No one else is currently on the roster. So a lot of these things aren't going to matter. My main thing with Auburn is I think Auburn, like you look at Auburn's roster and you look at the names and you see who's playing where. It's a really good roster. I thought for the most part, and I know a couple podcasts had mentioned this, I thought they were more talented than Georgia. It's from spot to spot, except that like linebacker, where Georgia's excellent, and quarterback. They have a disaster at quarterback. Jackson Arnold. I understand the thought process. Like Jackson Arnold looked pretty good to end 2023. 2024, every OU's O-line stinks. They can't run the ball, and their entire receiving core is out for the year. They had like 5 of their top 6 receivers just hurt at all times. And so I understand the thought process of bringing in a Jackson Arnold, be like, hey, if he gets we've seen it before, kid struggles, gets a reset, comes in and plays some pretty good football. And we'll talk more about Hugh Freeze with this. It just hasn't worked. He's completing 64% of his passes, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, but he still loves fumbling the football. Once you get out of, and this goes with Hugh Freeze, like once you get out of Hugh's script and you kind of muddy the game up, like if Mizzou can survive the first quarter and they're not down 2 scores, or they're not down or whatever, they're going to win the football game. Because if you can muddy things up against this defense, and Mizzou's defensive line is excellent, and I don't think Mizzou's secondary being awful can be exploited quite as badly as Alabama potentially could because of Jackson Arnold. Now, the issue is Auburn's receiver also has 2 excellent receivers in Singleton and Cam Coleman. Like on the year, Singleton has 30 catches, 279 yards, Cam Coleman 24 for 305, but only 5 touchdowns through 6 games through the air. Like that's just not – it's not good. They run the ball okay. Their offensive line, I think, is actually pretty good. It wasn't just the disaster that Oklahoma's offensive line last year was for Jackson Arnold. But you you have to be able to limit their run game and make Jackson Arnold do what Mizzou did, do what Alabama just did to you. Limit the run game, make Jackson Arnold have to make decisions on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. And if he beats you, then I'll yell and scream about the secondary. But like, I think that has to be the game plan going in. The thing I want to talk about, like Hugh Freeze now, this is year whatever there for him. He hasn't been good. I know they put a lot of on one hand, you have to say, okay, he did build this roster, which I think is a good roster. Despite the fact that they're 3-3, I do think this is a pretty good roster. I mean, you've seen it. They've competed. This is year 4 there. They've gone 6-7, 5-7, and now they're 3-3. This is a pretty good roster. They just whiffed on the quarterback. I think they thought, hey, we can grab a quarterback in the portal. Let's build up through the high school ranks. We'll grab a decent quarterback, and then we'll go. And it hasn't worked that way because the quarterback class in the portal stunk. It just did. They didn't get John Mateer. He goes to OU, and they weren't able to get some of the other guys. They weren't able to get Mendoza. He goes to Indiana and is shining. And they weren't. And Jackson Arnold just. I understand the thought process behind Jackson Arnold. It just has not worked in the slightest. And look, we're seeing a lot of coaches get fired. I think there's a chance Hugh gets there. And speaking of Jackson Arnold, going back to him, last year he did play Mizzou. He was 15 of 24 for 74 yards. Obviously had the huge fumble at the end. He did have 17 carries for 44 yards. So he was accountable for 41 touches, and he finished with, 41 plays went through him, and he finished with what? 45, 119 yards. Like, that's 3 yards per play. Like, that'll play. Obviously, I think he has a better supporting cast. How does Mizzou respond to a loss? That's what's going to matter to me. I don't think it matters what Auburn does. Auburn's really talented. You could certainly lose this game. Auburn's favored for a reason. Jordan Hare's tough to play in. It's Mizzou's first time taking this group on the road, which is a little ridiculous. But a lot of people were like crapping on Mizzou for that. Like, well, that's partly on the SEC too. Like, why did you not schedule the Week 4 game against South Carolina? Like, why couldn't that have been Vanderbilt or Texas A&M? Not Texas A&M. That's a home game. Or Auburn. Like, why did that have to be 2 straight home games to open SEC play? That's partly why I don't think that argument makes a lot of sense. Like, it's not like and for Mizzou, this is a team that wants to make the playoff, has the ability to make the playoff, and now you got to play 4 of your last 6 on the road in tough environments. Jordan Hare and Nashville, it's getting better, but Arkansas, in 2 tough environments. NOU. If Mizzou wants to make the playoff, you have to win this game. You just have to win this game. I don't know how many points it's going to take. I imagine if you get to 24 points here, you can and you will win this football game. I just don't know if you can get to 24 points. Just because of how good Auburn is and how tough it is going to be on the road. Like, Auburn has a better defense than Alabama, in my opinion. ESPN's FPI has Mizzou as a slight favorite in this game. FPI normally does a pretty good job of picking games in conference, so we'll see. But like, we've seen Auburn play 4 teams for Power 4 conferences. You have Baylor, who might win 7-8 games. They beat and crushed them through running the football. They went to Oklahoma, lost by 7. Of course, just 10 sacks or whatever it was. They played at Texas A&M. Never really felt like Texas A&M was in trouble there. But they were kind of keeping it close. And then they played Georgia last week, and they got utterly screwed in a lot of instances. Now, they could have responded better to some of the things that was happening on the field, from Kirby faking a timeout to that touchdown that looked like a touchdown. I was watching it at a friend's house, and it looked like he scored. But hey, you also then gave up a long score when they had the ball at the 2. So, and I don't think the Georgia offense is that special. For Mizzou to win this game, can they get to 20? Look, I understand the game for a lot of the fourth quarter, or a couple of your drives in the fourth quarter, you got game scripted out of being able to use Hardy and Roberts and Bo in the run game. That cannot be the case. I need to see 25 carries from Hardy. I need to see 12 to 14 carries from Roberts. I need to see like 5 or 6 designed carries for Bo. This needs to be a game like Kansas, a game like South Carolina, where you just run the damn football. If they stop it on 1st and 10 and it's 2nd and 8, run the damn football. If it's 3rd and 3, run the damn football. I think you have to go into the game expecting that Auburn cannot score a ton of points on you. And if they do, they do. Like, then you're just not as good as you thought, which is unfortunate. But I think this is a pretty good Mizzou run defense. I think they did a decent job against Alabama. Jam Miller had some moments, but I think overall they did a really nice job. Now you have to take that unit on the road, and we'll see what happens. All the pressure's on Auburn right now. Getting back to you, Freeze, if they lose this game, man. Like, they're 3-4. Yeah, they'll probably beat Kentucky, and they'll probably get to a bowl because they have Arkansas. Although at Arkansas, that certainly is a losable football game. They have Kentucky, but then they got to go play Hugh Freeze killer, Diego Pavia on the road. They got Mercer; they'll win that one. And then they got to play Alabama. Like, if Auburn loses this football game with what's been invested into this roster, which again I think is a pretty good roster outside of quarterback, not like a national title contender, but like an 8-win, 9-win team. And all of a sudden you lose to Missouri, and now you have no room for error against Arkansas, Kentucky, and Mercer. I mean, they're not going to lose to Mercer. So Arkansas, Kentucky, and potentially Vanderbilt. Like, you have no room for error at all, which is a tough spot to be in year 4 of a coach. This game's huge for Auburn, and they're going to come out like it, man. Like, Mizzou's coming off a devastating loss. Auburn's coming off a devastating loss. Who responds better in Jordan Hare? My prediction is Mizzou. I think Mizzou wins this game 21-14. I think it's going to be ugly. I don't think you're going to have much enjoyment watching this football game. But I think Mizzou comes out on top in a huge road spot. They get a late stop and win the football game 21-17. Auburn might spiral further. But I think Eli at this point is a better coach than Hugh. I don't think either quarterback's that good. I think the Mizzou backfield's better. I think the Mizzou run defense is excellent. I think it's set up to stop teams like this. And, it's going to come. Can Damon Wilson, Zion Young force a turnover with their pass rush through a forced pick or a fumble? Like, Jackson Arnold loves to fumble the football. As we saw, that was a touchdown, I think. But, he still fumbled it. You're going to have every opportunity to win this game. It's up to Mizzou to take it. And then you have another big one against Vanderbilt before you head into another bye week, which is crazy. We're into the second half of the season. Like, I cannot emphasize, look, as big as last week was, and it was huge, this feels like a bigger game. You win this game. Look, coming into the season, you would not if you said 5-1 with a loss to Alabama, you would have been like, okay, that's kind of what I expect. If this team's going to go best case scenario, it sucked. I was very mad Saturday, but it is what it is. You win this game, everything's on the table because now you're 6-1. You won one of your tough ones. Now you have to go 2-1 because you should. I've said all here. You should beat Mississippi State. You should beat Arkansas. I think Mississippi State's better. Arkansas was really tough against Tennessee. They always seem to play Tennessee tough. So I still think it's a game you should win. So you got those two. That gets you to 8-1. You got to take 2 out of 3. You got at Vanderbilt, at Texas A&M at home, and at Oklahoma. You win 2 of those 3, you make the playoff. If you lose this game, 7-5, 8-4 is on the table, which, look, isn't a bad year. Like I predicted before the season, 8-4. I thought they'd win the games they have, win the 2, and I thought Vanderbilt would be a game they'd win. I thought they'd lose this game in the preseason. If you lose it, 8-4, 7-5 is on the table. And then for as much momentum as you had, we could host game day. We could do this. We could do that. You have the stadium expansion before the schedule, and this conference for some reason goes to 9 games next year and the conference schedule just becomes that much harder. If you lose this, that's potential, and then things can free fall because then you got to go to Vanderbilt, and that's a losable game. You got a bye week. You got Texas A&M at home, losable. Mississippi State at home, all of a sudden really losable if you have 3 losses at that point. If now you're 5-3 or something, or 5-4 or whatever. I had Arkansas at the end of the year. This is a huge game. It's a huge rebound spot. You have to win this football game. I think they will. I think we're going to feel a lot better about Missouri coming out of Saturday than we do going into Saturday about their playoff hopes, because they're going to be 6-1 with another showdown at Vandy. Vandy's going to be coming off an LSU game, and we'll have another data point to talk about Vandy. So like and subscribe, guys. We are here at the Voice of College Football. I'm here every freaking week to talk about Missouri football on Monday nights at 7 o'clock. We might change that a little bit depending on how some things go for me, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And then, post game every show, post game every game. We have 6 of these left, 7 more they'll make a bowl. Potentially, if they have a bowl game like they did last year, and I have to work, I just can't do a post game for that. I'm sorry. Plus, I don't really care about the Insight Bowl. We watched it last year. I didn't even watch the game. I couldn't. I was at work, and then I just, with it being the holidays and stuff, I had no interest in going back and rewatching it more than the highlights. So, does that make me a bad fan? Maybe, but they've killed bowl season for me. So, hey, congrats to them for that. We do have merch. You can catch Missouri Tigers live on your favorite platform, wherever that might be, and I think we'll starting to get into SEC notes. As we saw, we talked enough about that Georgia game. God, dude, I don't know if you guys, if you're in the comments, let me know. If you guys ever had a sinus infection where, and I know because this is how I get my sinus infections, where it feels like the inside of my face is going to burst from the seam, burst out. It feels like it's like that episode of the horror episode of The Simpsons where they get turned inside out. It just hurts so freaking bad. Some quick SEC notes. I don't want top 25. I want SEC, CBS. Ole Miss, clear look ahead spot, but that's scary. You cannot be that close against that bad of a Washington State team. Texas A&M, hairy there for a little bit, but they took care of business against Florida. Texas, Oklahoma was interesting. I've talked all year when I've talked about OU. I don't think John Mateer plays well within the structure of an offense. When he gets outside that structure, he's an outstanding. Texas didn't drop picks, and he threw 3 of them, and he looked okay. He didn't look he might have been unhealthy. I don't think he should have played in that game. And Texas found enough points to go get a W, and that's a huge win for Texas. I still don't think they're going to make the playoff because I don't think they're going to win at Georgia and Texas A&M at home. But that was when they needed to stay alive, and they got it. So hey, good on the Longhorns. And now Oklahoma, same thing, man. Now you have a stretch where 9-3 might get Oklahoma in, depending on who be 2 and whatever. But now you got to go to South Carolina. You got Ole Miss, a South Carolina team that crushed you last year. You got Ole Miss. You got to go to Tennessee. You still got to go to Tennessee, Alabama, play LSU, play Missouri. You have 5 teams ranked in the top 16 to end the year. What happens if you lose this South Carolina game or you lose the Ole Miss game at home? And you lose, what if there's a chance you walk into that Missouri game 5-1, 5-2, 5-3, 6-4? And what happens to Venables if they lose that Missouri game? Look, it was great they got off to the good start. The win over Michigan was good, although it doesn't look as good after USC punked Michigan as well. You got the huge win over Auburn. Losing to Texas, man, like it feels like one you needed. LSU just beats up on South Carolina. It took them time. And then Arkansas and Tennessee was a really fun football game. Bobby P. Habai had those guys playing. We'll see what happens with Tennessee against Alabama. I wouldn't predict Tennessee to win that game, but it's going to be fun. This is a good week, Matt, for SEC football. And I don't always like when Mizzou plays night games because my Saturdays when I have to work are super long, and if the game's at 6:45, that means I'm not getting on here till 10:15, which means I'm not getting to bed until or I'm not done talking until 11 o'clock or 11:15, depending on who's in the chat and whatnot. So I just prefer the day games for selfish purposes, especially on the road. But other than that, man, you have Tennessee, Alabama. You have how does Texas respond going into sleepy Lexington? Mississippi State, Florida is if Mississippi State wins this game, Mississippi State's going to probably go to a bowl game. They have to go to the Swamp. And this is a game kind of like what we just saw with Penn State. We'll touch on that there here in a minute. This is a game where if you lose this game, Napier could get fired on Sunday. And then you got Ole Miss at Georgia. That's obvious. Okay, all eyes will be glued to the TV for that one. Texas A&M goes to Arkansas. I don't think that game's that interesting, but we'll see. We'll see what Bobby Petrino has scheduled up. Now that they're not going to be coming off a bye week. That's kind of we'll see what happens there. I think Texas A&M is a little bit not better than Tennessee, so. But, and then South Oklahoma, how do they respond to their loss? They got Texas kind of got them. They put it on them a little bit. Now you have to go to Williams-Brice, and it's now October, and Beamer teams tend to get better as the season goes on. It's kind of the same spot they were in last year. And then they picked the crap out of Oklahoma and kind of took off. And then LSU Vanderbilt, super interesting game. If LSU loses this game, their season's basically whoever loses, your season's over. Because I don't think Vanderbilt escapes the rest of their schedule with only one loss. And same thing for LSU. They still have Texas A&M. They still have Oklahoma. They still have Alabama. So it's a huge football game. You're starting to get to this point of the year where you're getting into elimination games, or at least no margin for error games. If Vanderbilt wins this game and Mizzou wins their game, you're in another week of now you have no room for error. So super fun slate of college football in the SEC for this week. Can't wait. Let's get into some national notes. Obviously, the big story of this week is Braden Shen. James Franklin fired at Penn State. Look, this can go one of two ways, man. I've heard the names, Matt Rule. We'll talk about Eli here in a minute. Matt Rule, Manny Diaz. They're not going to get Cignetti. But, if you get a coach like that, man, you fired James Franklin for Manny Diaz. I like Manny Diaz. But I just don't know. We'll talk about the Eli part of that in a minute. I firmly think Ohio State's the best team in the country. The frustrating thing, I've spent 30 minutes of my life in the last 48 hours, basically, talking about how a win like Saturday has just escaped this Mizzou program for years. Ever since they've kind of reemerged in 2007, they cannot get one of these wins. Somebody will say 2013 against Georgia. Guys, that Georgia team went 8-5. Sure, but that Georgia team went 8-5. It was not a good football team. And so I keep talking about that, and then Indiana does it. They get the win at Oregon. Last year, Indiana played two teams we all considered really, really freaking good. They played Ohio State, and they got killed. Look at Alex Texier dancing. Sorry, I love hockey. They got killed. And they played Notre Dame in the playoff, and they got killed. I was watching that game after I got off from doing some Mizzou post-game stuff, and I'm thinking, look, I didn't ever think Indiana was going to win, but I'm it's pretty big that, not a moral victory guy, and Cignetti's obviously not either, but it's big that like you just didn't get killed, because you got killed in these spots last year. And you then win the football game. Like, that's, dude, Kurt, he's so good, man. Like, I don't understand it. He's just so good. Texas Tech crushed Kansas. Look, Kansas is just not helping Mizzou at all. Like, 4-3 now. Georgia Tech might run the freaking table. Look, Michigan's probably out. They have to go play USC. Like, they have an elimination game against Washington this weekend. Washington's a team that should probably be rated in the top 25. That's a really good football team. If they do win this week, they will be. And Michigan's out. So if you're a Mizzou fan, like, again, I think if Mizzou wins Saturday, we can start going into like, all right, this is who you should be rooting for all these games. A team you should be rooting against. Like this week for USC is probably a team you should be rooting against. This week is, I knew he jumped up there, a no-lose, because like one of Notre Dame or USC's, you probably should root for USC to knock Notre Dame out, to be honest. Because a 3-loss Notre Dame with your losing all 3 of your big games would just be ridiculous for them to get in. That's a fun one, though. Utah kicked the crap out of Arizona State. BYU still undefeated. I still don't think they're that good. And Florida State. I just talked about how Florida's in a spot where they might fire their coach with a loss. Florida State loses to Stanford, you might see 2 openings in the state of Florida this weekend. I know the buyout for Norvell's crazy, but like you just can't keep doing this, Mike. Ever since the Florida State said, "Hey, the SEC or ACC, you suck. We're getting out of this," they haven't won. So this week, around the country, like Louisville, Miami looked a lot more interesting in the preseason. Louisville's offensive line just isn't that good. And Miami front 7, awesome. Miami's a national title contender. Nebraska, Minnesota. Nebraska's ranked. Like, this is a big spot for Nebraska. You win this game, like, there's a lot on the table for you, and they typically haven't won these games, in what feels like 15 years. So we'll see what happens there. Underrated, huge game of the day is Georgia Tech going to Duke. Both those teams have pretty manageable ACC schedules. If Georgia Tech can get a win here, they sincerely might only finish this year with 1 loss, as my cat is playing with his toy. Yeah, there's a girl cat. And they're going to make the playoff, even with this schedule. So, underrated, sneaky good game. Ohio State at Wisconsin, gross. Michigan State at Indiana, gross. We've already talked about the SEC games. Texas Tech goes to Arizona State. If Leavitt plays, that could be interesting, but I just don't think he's going to play. And I'm a huge fan of Texas Tech's outfit right now. Oregon at Rutgers. How does Oregon respond to a loss after pardon me for 1 second? There. How does Oregon respond to a loss? They have to go across the country. And then USC Notre Dame. And you got the Holy War and USC Notre Dame, and the first time that game's felt big. You're off for now in a long time. Last thing I want to touch on is, yes, Penn State did fire James Franklin. Guys, Eli's going to be an option for that job. When it's become obvious Florida is going to become open, they'll talk to Eli, and Eli may take that job if the situation calls for it. The situation comes up where he can take that job. I just don't think it's a shoo-in. If Penn State were to offer, I would be very nervous. I don't think he'll be their first choice. I think his lack of any kind of ties to Penn State, his lack of any real experience up in the Northeast, like at least Franklin was at Maryland for a little while before he made the trek over to Vandy. And, of course, was a really good coach, man. Like, James Franklin was a good coach. This year, I understand why Penn State did what it did. Sometimes things run their course. But he's a really good coach. Whoever gets to pick him up, like if you're a Mizzou fan right now, you got to be a little nervous Arkansas hires him. Because if Arkansas hires Franklin, that puts them in a really scary spot. Like, you bring in Franklin, you bring in Brett Pride, all of a sudden Arkansas, if they can somehow keep like Petrino on staff, like now Arkansas has something really cooking here. Franklin's a good coach. Eli's going to be an option. And I would be much more nervous about Penn State than I ever was Florida or like some of these other stuff. And the same thing I feel about Florida State, too. Florida State were to come open. I'd be more nervous about Florida State than I would. But Penn State, like a couple of different podcasts have talked about it, including like Cover 3. Like, yeah, no, Eli's going to be an option there. And he would be a good fit. And kind of have to see what happens moving forward with that. We'll obviously keep an eye on it. There's no point really worrying about coaching searches right now because Mizzou still has everything in the world to play for this season. They still have a chance to make the playoffs, still have a chance to even host a playoff game if they go 10-2 or 9-3. So we'll see what happens, guys. With that, I think I'm going to log off for the night. I'm about to go. Can I be frank with you all? I'm about to go throw up. I can feel it building. So thank you guys all for watching. You can catch me here next Monday, and you can catch me here Saturday, probably like 10:15. A few minutes after that game ends, and we will talk more about Missouri Tigers. This is Missouri Tigers Live. I am Zach Ramelius. Thank you, Mark, for that. You follow Mark over at the Voice of College Football for letting me do this. You guys all have a wonderful night. Enjoy your hockey, your baseball, your NFL. I 2 games on the night for whatever reason. Whatever your cup of tea is, and have a wonderful rest of your week. And I'll see y'all Saturday, man. It's huge. You have to win it. MIZ.